Welcome to this week's installment of Reading with Robin, your number one destination since 2002 for insightful author interviews and discussions on everything literary. And with no further introduction, your host, Robin Call.
I have a very special guest who needs no introduction because I feel like have you been on our lives before, Emily? Have we done stuff on my mom's page together, or have I just imagined that to be something that we've done?
I think you're imagining it.
Oh man, you know what it is, because I feel like so. Oh my God, that's awful. I'm a bad friend. Well, and for our listeners, I should tell them that you're a dear friend and kind of a co-conspirator in all things kind of bookish, and you work in entertainment. We'll just leave it at that. You work in video. You produce the highest quality stuff. You're incredibly talented. You're welcome. And you're a reader.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we first bonded on books?
So I remember when we first bonded. I only remember the first time we bonded, and it was over nail polish colors.
Which should have been a pretty good indicator of our friendship anyway, but I feel like the books only made it better.
Yeah.
I just and if you can tell our listeners, how you got to. Anyone who's listening, she is a super reader, and you should follow Emily definitely on Instagram. She's at Emily. It's XX Francis, right? Did I get that handle? Yes.
Yeah, you got it right, because I couldn't just get, Francis is my middle name, and I couldn't get just, Emily Francis, so I had to kind of, embellish it. And
it's a good embellishment, though.
Thank you,
though.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. But you post a lot about what you're reading on your Instagram, along with, tons of other interesting things, and I feel like that's definitely where I get my, digest of, hockey, too, and just Long Island Railroad stuff, but you read a lot, especially on the commute, and you read
especially
a lot of good things. Definitely on the commute. But yeah, just tell, I know why, but I think I love the story behind why you're such a big reader and how you kind of got to be that way. So if you could elaborate on that, that would be fantastic.
Well, the background is that my mom was an English teacher, a public school English teacher for, probably the better part of 30 years, I think maybe even close to 35 years. And
how is Fran even old enough to be having taught that long?
Well, she started teaching when she was 22. And she had seniors her first year of teaching. So imagine a 22-year-old teaching 18-year-olds, awkward. So my mom was an English teacher, and she kind of instilled that in me, but I didn't fully develop a good relationship with reading until probably maybe high school, when I started to have the time to read whatever I wanted, because I didn't like that, especially in elementary school, they try to push reading, and which is a good thing, but I felt kind of smothered by it,
Just to clarify. We do think reading is a good thing. However, no, I know. I thought about that the other day. Yeah, it's when you had to do book logs and book reports. Make it fun,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And they in my school where I went to elementary school, they had this program called Parents as Reading Partners or something like that. But they made it a competition. So it was you would get rewarded and get special prizes and stuff if you read the most amount of books. And I'm I don't want to do that. I was such a rebel about it. I'm I can't be bothered with this. So that kind of me as a 7-year-old, I wanted no part of it. And that kind of soured me from reading, because people were always telling me what to read and not letting me read whatever I wanted. So it wasn't until I, grew up and matured that I really started reading, actually developing a good relationship with reading and finding it as something that I wanted to do. And now I read 20 books a year. So
you read a lot. For the average person, you read a lot. And you know what? I've always wanted to ask your mom, and I don't know why I never have, but just to go back for a second, it's funny when you talk about, just encouraging kids to want to read, and that should be the goal, right, is to get kids, elementary school kids, middle school, high school, kind of those are tougher demographics, I think, in general, to get people reading, but it's just do whatever you can. And I'd love to get your take. It's I don't know if you ever had this when you were in middle school and high school, but where I went to middle school and high school, they had an approved list of reading for both summer reading books and also books that you could read throughout the year that you had to do to fulfill requirements for English class. And if you chose something that was not on that list, so it was probably either a banned book or something that was more contemporary, you had to write a pretty extensive report on it so that you could kind of prove that you read it. And I'm but if you're the kind of kid that is insatiable in reading and wants to read things that are carnal, why do you have to prove that you read it? You guys have that where there were lists of things that you could read?
Yes, there was definitely approved lists of what we could read. I don't remember if they had, it might have been the kind of thing where you had to read, say your summer reading was you had to read 3 books, and 2 had to be from the list of pre-approved books that somehow tied into the curriculum, and then possibly one of them was whatever you wanted, but I don't really remember. I don't remember there being some sort of pseudo penalization for choosing whatever you wanted. I don't think we had anything like that, but
I think my 8th grade
I do remember
English
we definitely
teacher,
had summer reading.
Yeah. I think my 8th grade English teacher hated me because I would, it was also more work for her because I just, and maybe that's why there are holes in my, in what I've read in terms of classics, but I gave her so much extra work because I had to submit these 2 pages, single spaced, really elaborate, probably, very boring reports on books that I read. But yeah, and so summer reading, it's funny because even though those memories are really not pleasant, I used to love summer reading. I don't know, how did you ever feel about that when you were a kid?
I didn't like it. I didn't like being told what to do.
Knowing you the way I do, that is not surprising to me at all.
Yeah. Well, and then my mom was if I didn't have summer reading, if there was a summer where I wasn't given summer reading for school, then my mom would give me summer reading, but it was you need to read X books, which it wasn't that many. It was maybe you need to read 3 books this summer or something like that. Just do some sort of reading. It doesn't matter what it is. Just read something, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. What I didn't end up really liking, and it's funny because I actually had a mom that on several occasions told me then don't finish it if it was something that I didn't like, and then I think it was, and I want to get this straight for her listeners, I think it was if it was a book that I didn't like and I wasn't going to be tested on, she was then don't struggle through it. I feel that was probably, I know she definitely said that for the book I had to read going into my freshman year of college. And it might have happened once or twice in high school if there was a way for me to kind of finagle around it. But there were definitely some summer reading, assigned summer reading, very specific books that I really was not a fan of. But it was funny. I was remembering the other day, Tuesdays with Morrie was a required reading book that I had to do for one. I think that was going into my freshman year of high school. And so it was kind of neat when we got those kinds of assignments. There are definitely certain titles that stand out more in my mind. I think I definitely remember far more of what I had to read for summer reading in, throughout high school. Although I do remember the book that I had to read going into the 6th grade, and I hated it. And I remember sitting in the car. It was very hot. My mom was running into the bank to make a deposit, and I was miserable about the book. It was super hot, even though she left the air on. And I was just that was, to me, that was peak annoyance with summer reading. Then when I got into high school, and I think it was going into my senior year, we had 2 books that were required reading, and I loved both of them equally, and it was Infidel and Falling on Cedars.
Oh, I read that a couple years ago. That was so good.
so good, and that was required reading. And I remember thinking, like, they both look really good, and I want to read the one that I think I'm going to like less. I want to read it first, and just loving both of them. So that for the summer reading for that English class, and it was the pilot year of the program, that made me very happy. But there were definitely, I think I had to read like Shakespeare during the summer one year, and I was just like, why? This is not fun. Also, like, isn't it kind of sad to read Shakespeare by yourself?
I don't know if I've ever done it.
We did a lot of that in my English classes. Like, to me, Shakespeare is like read in class with other people. There should be props, and because they're plays. Well,
right.
Why are you shouldn't be reading Shakespeare like a novel.
Right.
I feel very strongly about that. That's a platform that I'd like to. That's my soapbox. But yeah. No, but summer reading, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things that's such a fundamental part of your childhood. I mean, my mom still talks about summer reading, and they had some program at the library where you'd go and get stickers, and she, remembers her librarian so fondly. And and I just really, I remember, what did you call it, penalization. I was just too precocious, but, it obviously didn't totally hinder our love of reading, so that's good.
Yeah, there was a couple years ago I decided to reread some of the stuff that I read in school and, didn't appreciate it at the time because I was being forced to read it.
Yes, I was very envious when you did that. No, it was really cool. And do you, off the top of your head, not to totally put you on the spot, do you remember some of the books that you reread?
Of course.
One of them?
Yes, Lord of the Flies was one of them. So good. I remember liking it the first time around. To Kill a Mockingbird, also so good. And I remember liking that one. So there were a couple that I liked. I reread A Separate Peace. I reread that because I remember hating it in high school. I remember hating it so much. And I didn't hate it the second time around. And then I think I threw in some other classics that I hadn't read. Like I read Grapes of Wrath. I had never read that in high school. I read Of Mice and Men, and I hated that. I don't know if I would still feel the same way if I were to I feel like I've read it twice already, but I don't know if I would still feel the same way. Something I definitely will not read again, because I have already had to read it twice for school, is Catcher in the Rye. I hate Catcher in the Rye. And it's one of those books that's, so polarizing. Like, some people are like, I love it so much. How could you not like it? And then there's people like me who are like, please, I'd rather do anything than have to read that book again.
Oh, and you know what's so funny? No, I'm definitely in that camp with you, because I actually read it for the first time just by myself. I've only read it once, and I was like, you know what, I never took American Lit in high school, and I just felt like in terms of classics, there's a lot of holes in my background, and that was one where I was like, all right, it's a petite book, and, what's the fuss about? And I just remember thinking, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah, well, that was my attitude the first time around.
I'm not going to be quizzed on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my attitude I think the first time I had to read it, it was because I chose it for a book report, because I knew that, it was, I knew it was a classic. I knew it was super popular. I knew people had a lot of feelings about it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to take this on. I'm going to read this. And then I was like, I hate myself. And then when I had to read it again, I'm like, oh, no. And it was, just as bad. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad book. It's just I just don't like Holden Caulfield. I think that he's a wimp and a loser.
He's so whiny. And you know what? If I hear that word phony one more time, anytime I hear that word, I think of that book. I don't know how many times that word was used in that book, but I would really like one of our listeners to just kind of do a control find if there was a PDF version of this book and comment and let us know how many times you see it. But yeah, that book just, but it definitely is.
But
very
also I felt like he was using the word the wrong way.
Yeah. Although, did it mean else then? Have we changed
I don't know.
the meaning of the word? I don't know either. I'm just wondering. But
he used it the same way that people use literally.
Oh.
How people use literally too much and usually not the way it's supposed to be used. And I feel like that's the way he used phony.
Have you seen my mug that says, actually, you mean figuratively?
No, but I love that. I love that so much.
I really feel very strongly about the use of that word. Or its overuse. And, like, how did that one come to be? You know?
I don't
know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I would just really, these are all questions that I have. If anyone can tell us how the word literally got to be so overused, I would really appreciate that, and I'm sure Emily would too. But but yeah, that book just really, yikes. But that seems like a really fun I don't want to say fun and minimize it, but that seemed like a really cool project, because I wonder sometimes if teachers know that, you know, it's not necessarily their doing, but sometimes when you teach a book, you just take the fun out of it.
I read Tale of Two Cities for the first time last summer.
Oh, and what was I'm sorry, when I hear that book, that's one that makes me I feel like I might enjoy it more if I read it by myself, but definitely in the context that I read it, it was awful.
I mean, what I'm going to say is it was an undertaking, and thank God I had my mom's annotated teaching copy.
Oh, no, that's not fair.
I know it's not fair, but it's the world that I live in, so, you know. So, I'd be reading the book, and she's got, all of these notes, but a lot of the notes weren't really clear. It was just she would underline stuff. So it's not like she's writing, spark notes in the margins. Most of it would be things are bracketed or underlined, or sometimes something would be bracketed and next to it would say, why?
I don't know, Fran. Tell us why.
I don't know. Why don't you tell me? So, I would go into work and read on the way into work and on the way home. And then she would be like, how far did you get? So, I kind of got, private tutoring on Tale of Two Cities because she taught it so much, and I didn't know what the hell was going on, even as, a 28-year-old.
Did they turn that one into a movie? I feel like that might help.
Yeah, I think they did.
Okay. Wow. Well, I just always imagined that these annotated teaching copies were, super helpful, but I don't know what the difference is between a bracket and an underline. I mean, at least I feel like you have a leg up because you know that it's something you're supposed to be paying attention to. But, I mean, if she's really not going to explain it, then, Fran, come on.
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah, sometimes I would try to figure out, sometimes there would be stars next to something. I'm like, oh, maybe this is really important. But there's no explanation for why it's important. You just know that, it's got some sort of significance. Sometimes she would write, foreshadowing or, exposition or, if there was a paragraph that was, explaining a character's appearance or something like that. And that's, duh. But, in terms of, the reading between the lines stuff, that was, a lot more left up to interpretation.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, brother. What would a book club just between the two of us resemble? And any of our listeners who want to join in. I just wonder.
What would a book club with the two of us look like? I mean, if it was in person, it would probably involve beer.
It would probably involve a lot of beer. And then I feel like things would I feel like given our dynamic, it would probably just get very silly too and decline, but there would also be a lot of really poignant one-liners. I feel like it would be really enjoyable. Maybe what we can do, I love putting you on the spot and saying we should discuss something and tape it when I'm on Long Island at the end of the month.
Okay.
Or I'll just plant that seed. We can see about that. But I'll also put my mom on the spot as we're taping this and say that I'm going to take another episode of her podcast and use it for myself to do it too.
Okay.
But as my mom would say too, she'd be like, I'm so happy that you want to do this. I think my mom would actually be really, excited that we wanted to do another podcast episode. If we haven't scared her off after she listens to this one. But, it's just fun to have the keys to the car.
You know I'm always down.
I don't know. I like where this is going, and I'm glad
I
that
do
we
too.
have I'm so glad you do. And I also like that we have the evolution of this idea is now recorded forever. So I think, one last question before we wrap this up is,
okay.
What are you reading now?
Now I'm reading Girls Like Us right now.
Yeah, apparently you found a personal brand in your first 20.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, because it takes place on Long Island and in a specific part of Long Island that I happen to know, and also because it relates to crime, which, has to do with stuff that I work on in my day job. So that I felt, I felt like it kind of encapsulated a lot about me.
Yes, and so for our listeners, just one more time, Emily's handle on Instagram is at EmilyXXFrancis, and it's Emily spelled with a Y, Francis E-S. But I'll also put I'll tag you up and put your handles when we post the show. But, and you finding your personal brand then, oddly enough, inspired me to find my personal brand, which I'm reading a book now that comes out on Tuesday, so the day that this podcast airs, and it's called Dead Blondes and Bad Mothers, and it's nonfiction, and it's very, feministy and how women have kind of been turned into monsters, and, it's very good, and it's very you, and I totally am going to, I'm actually annotating my copy right now, but I feel like I'd be embarrassed if anyone saw my annotations. So I don't know. I mean, it's you, so I could give it to you, but what was I going to say? Oh, but mine started with, the first sentence was about Exeter, Rhode Island, which is one town over from where I live, and it was about Mercy Brown, the supposed vampire who just had tuberculosis, and her brother literally eating her ashes or her heart or whatever, I don't know. But I was like, yeah, and here's my personal brand. So anyway, so you're reading Girls Like Us, which is great. We love Christina Alger. We hosted her for that book. We've hosted her in the past, and she is a very dear friend of the podcast, the series, us. We love her. We love that book. So I'm so excited that you're reading it. Well, I think this is my favorite episode of Reading with Robin that I've ever done. Thank you so much, Emily, for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This has been you're one of my favorite people to talk to. I've been saying forever that I just need to call you more. Well, happy reading, and let us know about how you like Girls Like Us. I'll see you soon. And everyone follow her on Instagram. You are at EmilyXXFrancis. And what's your Twitter handle, too? People should definitely follow you there.
It's almost the same thing. It's just EmilyXFrancis. I wasn't able to keep things consistent, unfortunately. But
they can find you, and I'll include your handles when we post the show. She's tremendously entertaining in many ways, but you'll definitely appreciate the book, Rex. And I feel like I'm hanging up on a call with a friend, but I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you later.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's installment of the Reading with Robin podcast.